Okay, Bonnie Ghani, everyone. This is Professor Alvin Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, former city councilman for the city of Compton, former Compton College Board of Trustees, and former uh, 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 trustee for Compton Unified School District. We want to welcome you to Conscious Corner. We have a very special guest here today, and we want to get right into it because he has a lot to say. He's a master historian, a graduate of California State University in Long Beach, currently living in Cuba and lived in Japan and Africa. And he's worldwide recognized for his work in his publications, Black Truth, Black Revelations, and The Conspiracy of Silence. And he's well known for just deep insight, a deep thinker, and a courageous brother. We participated in many demonstrations while he was at Cal State Long Beach, including the defense of the Nifu Kareem and Irvin Hurst, and as well as the Ron Settles case, and many other activities and demonstrations that we had to keep Black people conscious. He's also the one that developed the logo for the Black Consciousness Conference, was very instrumental in helping us promote and keep it going for years. And he was a guest speaker there many times, talking about the origin of the word, of the alphabets and things of this nature. So he's my personal friend and a good brother, and we always welcome him when he comes in from Cuba, which he lived there for decades. And he really is just a strong brother from that standpoint, a brother not only of mine, but of all our people, a strong soldier for searching for Black truth. Without further delay, we're going to give it to Brother Asar Jerry Jubal. Go ahead.
Greetings. Habari gani, everybody out there. I'm glad I could find time to join. It's been a busy week. So it's been a depressing month, as I was talking with Rahh, with what happened with that election, but that's another story. I'm not even going to get into that because it just brings you down. But I was thinking, what was the Dr. Lagan's bookstore? What was the name there on
Aquarium.
Aquarium?
Yeah.
Uh, I remember listening. Oh man, that must have been in 1982 or three something to Richard King, who coined at the time during that lecture the phrase "black dot," and he was talking about the pineal gland, which is the third eye, which gives the ability to people of color to see to the other side, the spiritual side of our existence. And then I looked through my notes and found a bit which I called black dot, white dot. And I said, Richard King hit the nail on the head when he explained the pineal visual doorway between the spiritual and physical realms as black dot. That is exactly what it is from the physical point of view. Therefore, it is white dot from the spiritual point of reference. Yeah, this then would explain the whole this symbol here, the yin yang symbol. I don't know if all y'all's familiar with it. Should be, which is called the yin yang. And actually, yin and yang, you're talking about the two news, N up here and then N down here. And the way that the European had defined it, because wait a minute, let me see if I can find it right here. That Webster said of the yin part of it, that's the dark part, right? Says the yin is the female, the negative, dark, evil principle as contrasted to yang. Now, the idea that the dark was evil is strictly in a European white male mutant perception. It certainly did not come from the Chinese or any other people who are supposed to, who utilized this symbol, any people of color. This same warped viewpoint of albinos can be found in every endeavor, ideas of white supremacy over every science, because they lack the ability to see into the spiritual world, the mental or the mind. They don't have that pineal melanin that Richard King had pointed out so clearly and broke down and explained. He explained it from a physical point of view, the brain, how it works, etc. And he says, they apply their ideas to every science because they lack the ability to see in the dark or see into the dark. Thus, they use the terms as Webster states, like magic or evil or mystery, and then they infer a negative connotation to these because they can't understand it, they can't see it, they can't realize it. So this negative point of view did not just begin a couple of hundred years ago. It began from the time they first appeared on Earth, which is now about 3,500 years ago. And when you study their history, then all of these things start to click into place. The dark equals bad, female, evil, sinister. This is the result of patriarchal lineage, whereby the male is the dominant figure in the family, the village, the state, and in all parts of society. So now we see this playing out. It started um, the first time with history, which begins back with the Greeks. Alexander, they tried to create, his followers tried to create him as a cult icon, you know. And then he died, and then eventually the Romans took over the empire, what became the Roman Empire. And the first emperor of Rome, which is a little more than 2,775 years ago, was Julius Caesar, who adopted this child and named him, became the Augustus Caesar. And this kid was literally worshipped as the Messiah because people did not understand the meaning of the Gnostic term Messiah, which was a reference or title for the son and not to any historical person. So when Augustus Caesar died in 12 AD, he had this cult following who tried to claim that he had was the Messiah and all of that kind of the Son of God and all of that kind of stuff, which the people in the empire could not accept. They were Gnostics. They were people of color. They had their belief system, which was based on nature, understanding of nature, how it works. And so they completely rejected it. And the concept that was thrown out, they adjusted it as they went along. The people who had created this narrative about Augustus as the Messiah, the son of all of this stuff. And uh, they tried to convince some gnostics to join them. And, there was conflict. And the conflict lasted for some 300 years until this Austrian general named Constantine marched in with an army into Rome, overthrew the emperor, and took over the empire. And then that was in 312 AD. So some 300 years of turmoil in the Roman Empire was because the followers of the icon cult figure Augustus were trying to impose this narrative about him being a historical Messiah. So Then when Constantine overthrew the empire and he became empire, anointed himself empire, the first thing he did, well, one of the first things, this was in 312. In 313, they had what they called the Edict of Milan. It's in Italy, whereby they declared that Christianity, as promoted from the followers, which had evolved from the followers of Augustus 300 years prior, and that it would be the only accepted religion in the total Roman Empire. And this led to immediate conflict because all of the people, most of the people, I should say, even the European white people, were Gnostics, and the rest of the world was people of color. They were all Gnostics. So, in order to enforce this new narrative, they convened 10 years later, or 12 years later, in 325, the Nicene Council. That was in Nice, Italy. They convened that, and they ordered all of the various religious leaders in the empire to attend this conference, whereby they imposed this new religion of Christianity on all the religious leaders, and told them that they had to accept that narrative or resign or get kicked out. And many of them got replaced by Constantine with people that he wanted to follow the narrative. And doesn't that remind you very much of the situation that we see today here in this country? I mean, it's very, very similar. First, you have this cult, then you have this icon at the head of that cult. People don't care what kind of morality or personality that he has. They just don't care. He is the a white supremacist, saying in essence that white people are superior because they have the ability to kill without remorse. Now you check the animal kingdom, the world. Animals of the same species don't kill each other. It's very rare that that happens. Now, they fight for dominance, their position within the clan or hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, within the clan, but they don't kill each other. They simply find a way of displaying who is physically or superior. And then once that is displayed, it's accepted by both sides and peace prevails. But with the Europeans, they are not normal, average uh, uh, people because they lack melanin. It's so important for us to understand the reason that they've constantly attacked people of color, no matter where in the world they've been, is because they have this deformity, this need to have melanin. And without melanin, they see us just like they seen the yin of the yin yang, as evil, dark, foreboding, something that they can't understand. And so what do? They create a Christian religion that brings about a white God living in the sky someplace, and his son sent to earth, yeah? And without a mother or without a birth, a normal birth. And all of these things play into the fact that they want people to see them as being superior to everybody else, even though they know that if the playing field is equal level, they don't stand a chance. So they keep pushing this white supremacist narrative, and they enforce it by violence. And their whole history, man, when you get into the history of the Europeans, it starts way back with the Greek Herodotus, They in 500 BC, they're already at war. And from that point on until today, they're constantly at war. Doing what? Trying to preserve their dominance forcibly over the rest of humanity and over nature in total, really. Their religious story, which to me is a joke. But when it's scary because so many of our people have accepted it without knowing the history, without they don't. Some of them don't even want to hear the history. They want to believe in some superior being beyond their own mentality uh, that controls everything in the universe. And the result of that is it's taken us away from who we are as a people. We accomplished incredible deeds before these mutations came. And it's hard to make that point and tell people, look, read this, read that, because they don't. And some do, but most don't. And they're satisfied with listening instead to the preacher or the priest or, the pastor telling you this, taking out one or two verses from the white man's book, Bible, and using that for his weekly sermons to explain his own point of view. This is what God said. This is what he meant. This is why he did that. You see? Meanwhile, the whole story is bogus. It's fake and it's false. And I don't know, I've spent the last 45 years trying to make that point to explain to people, look, if you are a Christian, and I grew up a Christian, but if you are a Christian who has heard the history of Christianity, how it came to be, and who made it, and how it's affected the world since it appeared on the scene, and you still accept it, then you're literally supporting white supremacy. And I know it's hard for people to make that distinction between going to church every Sunday and and then thinking of people like of the white supremacists who committed all the lynchings and police that murder our brothers and sisters, and it's hard to make that connection and think, well, we all think, well, Christianity is good, God is good, Jesus is this, and all of that, and these other stuff that ain't got nothing to do with it. But that's not the case at all, because the main uh, force that produced the likes of these cult figures like Donald Trump is, and like Adolf Hitler was, and even Biden was, and still is rather. All of these cult figures, going all the way back to Constantine, was that they wanted to take forcibly, by force, control of their realm. And anyone who defied or denied that, they would kill them. That's why there's been so many genocide. You think this one in Palestine is only one. The ones they had here in America were far worse, far worse. It was 55 to 60 million people of color living here when these Europeans came just 500 years ago.
Hmm. You froze, Jubal.
Trying to stop the
Jubal. Yeah,
genocide that we see going
Jubal.
on today.
Go back a little bit because you froze.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
About just go back a few through points that you were making.
Okay, well, the point is that so many of our people distinguish or try to separate their own religious beliefs in the Christianity in the church, etc., from the politics of white supremacy, from the governing forces that control our lives. They don't see any connection. And yet the main bulk, not the main, almost total, all the supporters of this iconic white supremacist man are Christians. That is when, in fact, they want to impose a white Christian society on the rest of us. And that white Christian society means that they will make the rules and they will dominate and they will not be prosecuted for any crimes that they commit. Think about that. I mean, this guy, Trump, is trying to get the uh, immunity and prosecutorial immunity for police officers who are involved in shootings. And who do these police officers shoot? Us. They don't want them to be prosecuted for that. That is part of their plan. So how could you then say that, well, this man is the head Christian, the head white supremacist, and you are going to the church every Sunday and putting so much into that? I understand the need for communion and community to come together and solve the problems. But this uh, when you neglect hearing how this Christianity came about and cannot explain any of the so-called fake miracles that claim, none of it is natural. And when you claim to believe that and then practice it by attending all of your own African mentality, which was to worship nature. The idea was that we know that there's another side, that the physical world is not everything, it's only half of our existence, that the circle that we call the celestia, the word celestia means circle. And that is our existence, that you go through a physical phase and then a spiritual phase. And that to make the transition from one to another requires that your mind be rebalanced, eh, redeemed, cleaned, so that you become an innocent personality. And therefore, you're eligible to be transformed into a new spiritual or physical existence or life. And these are the things that is so distressing, really, for me, because it's frustrating to know the history that this guy has imposed, not just on Africa and Africans, but man, every place on the Native Americans of America. Look how they strut about talking about America's this, we're number one, USA, USA. Uh, they have murdered millions of Native Americans and took their land, forcibly took their land, forcibly destroyed these people. I mean, calling them heathens and savages and pagans, any negative things in order to justify these acts that they do. And now, man, I was driving around here this last week, and man, there's a church every half a mile, no matter what direction you go in. They're everywhere. All these symbols. But you don't think of, you would think with all that many churches, man, this would be a peaceful, happy place. But it ain't. One of the streets is called Seminole. It's right here. Seminole Boulevard. They took the Seminole people, the Native Americans were here in Florida in this area were called Seminoles. They invited and gave refuge to Africans who ran away from slavery from Georgia and Alabama, Mississippi, down into. And because of that, the white people who at the time didn't even populate Florida, they marched armies down here and took the Seminole and forced them, the ones that survived the killing, forced them on boats to New Orleans and then on to Oklahoma and put them in concentration camps in Oklahoma. And not just the Seminoles. They did the Cherokee, the Cree. I mean, read which chapter in the Conspiracy of Silence where I talk about this a little bit, but not maybe in that much detail. But this is the animal that we're faced. This is our enemy. It's been like that for since we came into contact with them. They constantly kill that built that great pyramid, which to this day they can't explain how it was done. It's beyond anything that they can conceive of. So they don't want that genius ever again to come to fore, because when faced with a world where everything is equal, like I said, and the playing field is level, they have a disadvantage. And that disadvantage is the inability to contact the commune with the spiritual part of our existence, which is everything to the African. One other big disappointment to me was the number, if we could believe those numbers, of young Black men who did it all. But it's the same thing because she's a Black woman. And we have forgotten here in America that we came from matriarchal, matrilineal societies. Mama ran the house. Mama was in charge in the kitchen, in the house, in the yard outside, in the village. She conducted all of the trade and at the market, etc. The mail was used to bring whatever she needed, but she was in charge. Indeed, she ran the country thereby. And even to this day in Africa, if you want to marry an African woman, you, the male, has to pay a dowry to her family. Whereas the opposite is true in Europe, you see, where, the father of the bride has to pay everything. But in Africa, it's the other way around because we came from matriarchal societies and we've forgotten that. How in the world could you let this monstrous man, I don't even want to call him a man, really. I think he's disgusting. But let him back into office after you already seen the chaos that he brought his first term. And then you let him back in? Oh, are you kidding me? As opposed to letting in a Black woman? Are you kidding me? What are you thinking about? And yeah, I know you said next week you're going to be discussing that very issue. I hope I'll be able to call in on that. But really, this is how really detached from the history. If you what do you know how many Black people they've killed? How many uh, every time Black people got together and prospered, they'd come in and attack and just burn down the whole community, raping and pillaging and murdering. I mean, many, many times over. And this just not the Africans. They treated the Chinese that came here as laborers as the dirt. And I mean, think about it. And the people of color have never been a threat to us, to each other. But the white people from Europe, it doesn't matter what party or what country, they could be fighting each other. They still came out. They had two things in common. Number one, they were white, they lacked melanin. And number two, they were Christian, period. So now when I see uh, the number of people, Black people and other people of color who are involved in this Christian movement, I have to raise the question, what are you thinking, or are you thinking at all? And somehow we've got to find a better method, writing books and holding programs, and we're not reaching the masses. And we need to improve on that to where we can get the word out. Look, the Christianity, I know how much you love it. I grew up in it. I loved it too, but at the time. But once I learned the truth, and once I learned how oppressive it was to us as Black people, and once I realized how much it supported the theory of a white supreme God and these white people, eh, and these people who had their foots on our necks, you know, this, I turned away from it because the truth is something. We need to re-embrace that and quit believing this outrageous lie about some Jesus character that never existed, never existed. And that's just the truth of it. And you can challenge any of those preachers. They will not discuss the history because there is no answer for them. You know, they're basing it on your emotions and on what needs you might have at the time, that week, that day, you know, and not on the truth as it appears historically and or politically for that matter. And that's where we're at. And basically, that was the point I wanted to make, and just open this up for discussion because I see the problem is we're just not reaching enough people, you know. And if in fact this election was not rigged, and you know, uh, nevertheless, uh, a lot of Black men, apparently young Black men, voted for this uh, hole, you know? And I mean, this man was guilty of rape. Kidding me? You know, a fraud. He's a notorious liar. And he threatens what? Retribution, man. Threatens to stack the courts and clean the government. How could you bring this guy back in? You know, so this is that was the point I wanted to make, and without getting too technical, because I have, man, my notebook is filled, really filled with so many things that I write down as I go along and do my research daily, especially down there because I have fewer distractions down there, except when the power goes out. So uh, anyway, that's the gist of my the point, and I'd like to get some opinions and some ideas. There's one other point I would recommend is look, I've many of us have seen the viciousness of racism. Some of us have felt it and been victimized by it. And now it's there staring us in the face, whereby everything is going to be once again on their side, the racist side. You know, the law is going to be on their side. They already got all the guns. They, you know, so we need to, on a personal level, make plans within our own family and extended family and then neighborhood, to protect yourselves and to just reckon with the possibilities. Even if some of these things don't come to fact or fruition, it's better safe than sorry. So make plans and organize.
All right, all right. We're gonna start off with Brother Historian Joe. You got any comment? Are you there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. I
Speak a
agree.
little louder. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with everything the brother's saying. I ran into the same thing around election time. So many brothers, you know, voting for Trump. I couldn't believe it, but the fact, giving him credit for those stimulus packages because they got a few dollars in their pocket. Thought they was gonna get some more if he get elected again, but uh, just I don't know what the solution is with our folks, man. They unless we just target the youngsters, because these older African people, they're just, I mean, they're totally engulfed in it. I mean, it amazes me. You give them all kind of evidence. I was talking to some people today, talking about the Bible, and any book that is not a novel, you got footnotes where you can verify, what the people are saying in the book. There's not now one in the Bible, not one. And they talk about. I was listening to Billy, what's his name, Billy Carson, the other day, and he has a video, "The Dark Side of the Bible," where this is how much slavery is emphasized in the Bible. He went about 8 different passages that was talking about slavery in the Bible. And he said he talking about God is so good and all of that, and he did numbers that God had killed about 3,000 people in the Bible, and the devil hadn't killed anyone. So I'm kind of agreement with Elijah Muhammad. I don't, go along with a lot of stuff he says, but the devil I see is that blonde hair, blue eyes. But anyway, it's a task, and I'm gonna stay on it. I was sending around a video today about his sister talking about Moses never existed. She ran down the whole lineage of people who've been floated down the river in a basket. This stuff is just made up. It's faith based. It's all on faith, and I don't know. But anyway, appreciate what you said, brother. I like to hear what some other folks got to say about it. Maybe somebody else got some solution. But Rahh, Rahh, you always tell me leave them Christians alone because we will kill you. And if you talk like we talk, the preachers tell them congregations to stay as far away from us as you can because they don't want the congregation waking up, so they stop giving that money. That's the whole thing, getting them dollars. And a lot of these churches want to see your W-2s and your tax forms when you join the church. Now, what kind of stuff is that? But anyway, I'm gonna let someone else get involved in the discussion. All right, appreciate
All right, brother Ahi, you have any comment?
Yes, just a few points that the brother was bringing up. Maybe he can expand and expound on
We
it.
can't see your face, your camera. You're not in your camera. Yeah, there it is.
Yes, a few points that the brother was making. When Constantine changed the narrative of Christianity and made God, Yeshua, or otherwise known as Jesus, a god, and hunted down bishops who refused to go along with that, murdered them. A lot of them were African bishops. They were saying, no, we're not going to change the narrative. We're not going to make him a god. A lot of them lost their lives because of that. Facts, they don't care about facts. That's why they always say we're going to go on your faith. Let your faith guide you. We don't care about the facts. Same thing with this devil that they just put in office. They don't care about his positions on any policies. They don't care about what the facts are. It's about white supremacy. And in their minds, it's about their survival. So they'll put a devil in. They are devils. A devil is as a devil does. And that word really gets to them. You can call them a puss bag, a hunky cracker, and everything else, but call one of those white people a devil and just watch everything just change. They can't take it because it hits them right where it hurts in the truth. The ministers and the preachers are complicit. A lot of them study their religion. They go back. I have a few frat brothers who are ministers, know about Horus, visit the Holy Land and Egypt, and have that information. But like the brother was saying, it's a hustle. It's a job. We getting paid. And it's a damn shame. So when you got ministers that are complicit and keep teaching lies, getting paid by their congregation in tithes, flying planes and riding around in Rolls Royces and not doing anything constructive in your community, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to go for this crap when your leaders lead you to it and through it. I don't know how we're going to get through to the people. They don't want to know the truth. They don't care to. They don't care to know the truth about their candidates, the people they put in. Some of these young brothers, and I'll have to kind of go. I was listening to Keith Boykin talk about what the narrative is for the young black men today. They put a few black men on there to say something crazy about this heathen, but they don't have anything to substantiate the numbers that they are talking about. And Keith Boykins, I think his name is, brings this up and throws some numbers out. And these are numbers that he can show you where he comes up with those numbers from. So I'm not going to accept the narrative. Yeah, I've heard some young black men talk about, but let's remember, she's got the third largest vote number in the history of the presidential election. She did it in 3 months. Only 2 other people got more votes than her that ran for president. That's the devil that's going to be in there in January and Biden. So I'm not going to buy the narrative that the black people didn't show up and the black people didn't vote and the young brothers turned against her. The narrative is it wasn't enough white people voting. That's what the narrative is, because we showed up. And if we got to break records every time a president runs, it's just a matter of time anyway. Because these devils are concerned, and they've been concerned about this since we got here. And now it's to the point like they don't care. If I hear about reparations or cops shooting you on the street. I don't care about that. It's not, I never cared about you in the first place. It's about me. And I'm convinced that it's about my survival. And we have to eliminate you and keep you in your place by any means necessary, including using a religion against you that came from your people. The Coptic Church is the oldest church on the planet that's still existing. That's in Africa. And there were African Christians and Muslims that were enslaved. So they don't even want to tell you that. So I don't know where we go. The white man must be stopped by any means necessary, because the planet Earth may have been already damaged beyond repair. That's why they're trying to go to the moon or wherever they're trying to go, to Mars. The people just annihilating whole groups of people, just and using their religion as a means to justify it. Now, on the Seminoles, that's what I was trying to think of. The Seminoles too have turned their backs on the Africans who have been living as Seminoles and who ran away with them, 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, when reparations were starting to be distributed to those people. They are not acknowledging the African Seminoles that are with them and are saying that they are not deserving of any of this money. We stand alone. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you, brother, for coming on.
You're on mute, Rahh.
Sister Linda, you have a comment? All right, Brother Mashinda.
No comment other than, again, thanking, Brother Jubal coming on again tonight. Uh, you know, very familiar with the information, and the solution is a very difficult one. In terms, it's like trying to figure out a math problem that you've been scratching your head on for for a long time, trying to crack that nut. I think a lot of folks are going out the world backwards, and it's all the other cliches, uphill battle, all that. I I don't have a negative outlook, because I know that nature will correct itself, so I have no doubt in that. So in the meantime, in the midst of this transformation that we're living through, just a matter of time when, through natural attrition and, there's going to be uh, major transformations going on globally, universally, so I'm very hopeful about that. But in the meantime, in the midst of the war, the battles, it's tough, and be it, to hear like Brother Jabal, who's been in the game for years and years, to even hear his sentiments and his expressions about, like the elections, it's like unbelievable, it's like like, what are these people thinking, but we understand on another level why it's really happening, it's just it's uh you know good against evil, there's forces on both sides, and we just got to align ourselves with what's good, and continue to try to uh try to enlighten and save as many souls as possible, so to speak, you know. But it's a hell of a battle, you know. But anyway, thank you again, and I'm pretty much right now.
Okay, then. Brother Robert Hill, you have a comment? You there, Robert? You on mute. All right, Brother Rashaki.
Yes, Brother Jubal, can you unmute? Because I want you to kind of expound on something.
You muted him. Can you unmute him?
I only can ask him to unmute because he had the kids
Jubal,
coming.
you on mute.
Okay.
All right.
How
Okay,
about now?
so
No, you
yeah, this
good.
is good.
All
I
right.
think you mentioned something that was very significant, Brother Jubal, and you said that when I guess the preachers or whoever are preaching sermons, people attend those sermons or come to preachers when they're at a low point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very significant. And when that preacher or whoever's giving them that information, they try it and it works, then they want to say that it's this phenom type individual that
God.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying the Jesus,
You're right.
not knowing that, and I want you to talk about it a little bit. In my estimate, it's already in you
Mm.
to come out of whatever you're going through.
Mm.
So that deity that you seek is already there. Can you kind of talk about that? Because I think that's very significant point that you made right there.
Well, I was had written some things about that a little bit. I don't have it in front of me right now. It's somewhere in this notebook. But the thing that uh, white people, for example, use to make them supreme or act supreme over people of color is the ability to kill without remorse. Simply kill, you know? And then they think that is their strength. That's why you see them so armed with bases and armies and planes and bombs all the time, But in fact, in the black mind, naturally, and people of color, the the strength is the ability to do the opposite. Is to not show violence or as a way of settling, because we learn that from the natural world, from nature. As I pointed out, animals of the same species, they don't kill each other. They settle problems in the case of the animals by showing force, but they don't kill. And humans, the strength of humans is the ability to think, to make logic, and to commune and communicate with each other. So that's how problems are solved. If there was a dispute between two neighboring people, then the elders of each community would get together and they would solve the problem. And that made sense. That's the way it's done. Until these mutations came along, uh, who saw themselves as deformed. And as a deformed, they had to find a way to, as they called the guns they invented, the great equalizer, to equalize themselves. And then once they saw the power in their minds of what that produced, then they just improved on it all the time, making better and bigger and more weapons and dividing people, etc. So black people have a need to uh, uh, for some understanding of the ability of the innate ability that comes with that pineal mind to communicate with the other world. Now, you might not have no understanding of it because you've been taught, we've been taught, I should say, by Europeans in their system. They set up all of the laws we live by and follow, the books that we required reading, and, this 101 class or that 101 class. They, in order to be viewed as successful, we have to apply ourselves according to their rules, according to their own vision, whatever they see. And Black people, as we try that, realize that, hey, this doesn't feel right. Why? Because you have that innate ability to see into the other world. You know that life, or excuse me, existence is not just here in this physical world, that it's a complete circle, that the yin, because it's black, is not evil. It's indeed blackness, as I point out many times, is where life is produced, where transition takes place. How could that be evil? You see, these things come into play, and we have no one there to explain it. They did away with all our religious leaders. The first people that the missionaries had murdered, eliminated, assassinated were the religious leaders in the villages. They had more importance to the people in the village than did the chiefs. You understand that? So these kinds of living in communities which are white run and have been, for us at least, for the last 500 years, we've lost all sense of our Africanness almost. And as a result of that, we find some solace when we go to church, and suddenly this good thing or bad thing that happened to you is from some power, some beyond human power, some power in the sky, some miracle, and you attribute it to that without understanding that you're feeding uh, that lust, that quest for knowledge about that pineal doorway in the spiritual realm that exists, that we all have to go to. You understand? White people don't give you those answers. Then the preachers play on the fact that you have these emotions and there's no one to explain, because all the religious leaders were murdered. The people brought from Africa to work on the factories and plantations, etc. They didn't have the leadership. The leadership had been murdered. They had no one to explain it to them. And so nowadays, when we have great leaders, such as many of you are, you try to apply the rules of the society that we live in, and you miss the point of the African side of us as people, that spiritual side that some we know about, but we can't relate to, because really it's been neglected for the last 500 years, at least the last 500 years. And so we seek solace in the church. It doesn't answer your questions completely. It doesn't draw you a circle, say, well, if A and B is E, but you get somebody telling you, yeah, well, God did that, or the devil did that, you see? And what else do you have? What alternative do you have? Who's there to explain? You understand? So this is what has captured our people in that Christian narrative. And we've got to find a way to break them out of that. We've got to find a better way. I'm finding out that just explaining history is not enough. It doesn't work. I remember so well back in Long Beach State, a sister putting her hand up in my face like this, and brother, I just don't want to hear that. Can you imagine? I don't want to hear that because the truth, because if I hear it, I know it's going to change me. It's going to give me something to think about. So I don't want to hear that. And that's where a lot of our people are today, you know? Really. So that's my bend on it. Uh, for what we're charged with having to do is somehow reach our people's spirit through a spiritual explanation, not political, not physical, because we pretty well have done that a lot. We've explained their history, the many genocides they committed, and all of that stuff. And yet we still have people who say, oh, I don't want to hear that. So where are we failing? And why is it that these preachers keep the flock coming back? With some mysticism, some miracle, and then accredit it to some fake spook in the sky God. Come on. We've got to approach, I think, this problem of communicating with our students from a spiritual aspect. And that means re-educating ourselves as educators and learning and finding out. Because when you look at it, that's the big missing part of this whole diasporic existence experience that we've had. How many of you know what it's like to walk through the Congo in the middle of the night? You know what I'm saying? The feeling that comes with that, it's so different. And we don't understand anything about that. But seeing somebody just trance and swoon, literally leave, psychologically, mentally leave, and yet their body is right there. And you know that their mind has gone off. How do you explain that? These are the kind of problems that we're confronted with. And man, here in this America, it's a hard road to hoe.
Well,
really.
Can you kind of explain the monetary value system, like how money is valued versus humanity being valued? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Money is God, isn't it, for these people? For all people. It is. And this is what the Europeans worship. They talk about all that good game about Jehovah and the spook in the sky and Jesus and this and that and Moses and all of these other figures from the fake narrative. But in reality, bottom line is green, the dollar. And they use that as a weapon. I mean, just look at the number of countries today. I think there's something like 66 various countries in the world that the U.S. has imposed sanctions against. I was telling you before we went on air. Go to the United Nations, our world, except for Israel and the U.S., votes to lift sanctions against Cuba. Yet none of those countries can invest in Cuba because the dollar system control is international method and means of trade, commerce is with the US dollar. And the US banks don't accept any Cuban banks. So other countries that try to go even under the table to trade or invest in Cuba, if the US finds out about it, the banking system, then they'll reject any loans to that country or the private companies from various companies and isolate them, bar them from, and even in some cases, they will freeze their assets, which are in US controlled banks, the banking system, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They put a freeze on them and just freeze the assets. And that just further chokes off uh, the countries. So this is as much of a weapon for these capitalists as the guns are. And if you ask, I don't know if you can ask them which one is more important to them, money or guns, probably be the same. But that's the power of the capitalistic system. Is look at the for one example, all of the so-called swing states that voted for Trump, if we can accept the results. Well, just say we do. All of those swing states that voted for Trump, one of the main reasons they voted for him was because so many of the factories that had existed there and gave people a middle class lifestyle had shuttered and closed. I remember in the 50s, man, I went to Milwaukee and Chicago and Detroit, and that whole area, was booming. Pittsburgh had this US Steel mills. That whole area was booming. And then what happened? I think when Reagan, I believe it was Reagan, came along and started Reaganomics, whereby they opposed the labor unions. The unions were making such a profit from the that were being made by both the owners and the stockholders were being shared by the people who worked the factories. But now with the Reaganomics and opening up to foreign markets, they could find, oh, look, why do we have to pay this guy $20 an hour when we can get the same job done down here in Mexico or in Vietnam or wherever for $2 an hour? Yeah. So they moved their companies, their factories out of the U.S. to foreign markets, and then brought what those markets produced back into the U.S. and sold them at higher prices and made more profit. That's why you see this huge 1% of the American people, the richest 1%, and the rest of us. There's a huge gap. And that explains another thing. The Chinese in 1970, I think I said this before to you, when I went to Canton, I went to Hong Kong and then got the train and went to Canton. I was in the Navy then. I wasn't allowed to go, but went anyway, just had to see. Man, China was dirt poor. It was in 1970 the poorest country in the world. Think about that. What happened? They were not a capitalist system. They were a communist system. A communist system means that they were a community. Communism, community, same word. And they could communicate with each other so that they could remain organized. A social lifestyle was based on being able to share whatever goods you have with the company and the people, so that as this growth from 1970 till now took place in China, the Chinese, they didn't care about no stock market. The stockholders, even the owners, they would let them earn so much, but the main profits went to the people, went to the workers, the poorest ones. And they worked on lifting people out of poverty and brought them, made them equal. I mean, there's some rich people in China, but on the per capita basis, there's no comparison. No comparison. And because they were so well organized as one system, or one political party, Communist Party, they were able to go from in 1970, the poorest country in the world, to today, 75 years later, no, not even that much, 55 years, as the richest country in the world. Amazing. Amazing. You know, it comes down to them saying, we respect our people. We do not worship the dollar. And that is the difference right there. You don't see them going out with military bases all around the world attacking people. No, they go into Africa and to other parts of Asia and they say, hey, look, I need some of your goods. I'll help you build your infrastructure. And we'll do this on an equal basis. I'm not interfering in your political system. All I want to do is say, let's be equals. Let's work together. What a difference from the US, who comes in with their guns and their IMF and International Monetary Fund and World Bank, and intimidates and corrupts and divides. And that's how they've been doing it, the colonization, European colonization, for 500 years. That's how they do it. So I don't, I forgot what the original point was. I hope I got it in there somewhere.
You answered it, and you answered it well.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, Jubal, I got a few questions before you leave. First of all, what do you mean, for some of us that may not know, when you say they were eunastics?
Oh, eunastics were simply people who believed in nature, actually.
Okay.
That's about as basic as you can be.
Yeah.
I mean, they learned, they understood that the lessons of life that they learned came from the animal world. The sounds of the animal world, we repeated. The way that the animals settle problems and cooperate with each other, we repeated from observation and learn from those animals how to survive without, as I point out many times, without fangs or claws or the fins, all of the things that the animals possess in order for their
wait for you to come back.
And so that observation, the first professors was nature. It wasn't no human being standing there with a stick in his hand pointing to the book.
They call nature the book of life. But let me just say that the other issue is, see, some people for the various religions provide the answers for the questions and the unknown for people, such as what happens after you die and where the world came from. Because people wonder about that. So these people create answers. I think Dr. Ben said, gods don't create people, people create gods. And at the same time, organized religion are secret societies and cults they don't want to call them a cult. They call them a religion, but they're a cult. A cult is who's doing the believing. The cult is what you believe in. So, and so people don't want to look at that, but you can't be a Christian unless you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Can't be a Muslim unless you accept Allah as your creator. And you can't be a Jew unless you accept Abraham, Moses, and Noah, and that whole First Testament as your spiritual guidance and your faith-based thing. But all three of them are ran by Europeans now. They argue that the first Jews were black, and some of the first Episcopal Church was in Africa, Ethiopian Episcopal Church, and all that type of stuff. But the point is that all of that has been, even if it was, it's been taken over by Europeans and corrupted it. We don't, they say it was first black Jews, the first Jews were black, but they don't say what their Judaism was. But we do know that the Ethiopians that the Jews brought over to Israel said that they were following a different Judaism than theirs and made them convert. Now you got even Yusuf ben Israel, who took Israelites, he called them Israelites, over to Israel. Now they're fighting with the European Jews to exterminate the Palestinians.
Yeah.
Even though they were treated with racism when they were there. But anyway, let me get back to my other point. Dr. Richard King, I knew him as a youngster. He went to Markham. And he
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I got his picture in the annual. And in the 19 well, I was there. I can't remember what year it was. But anyway, the three major religions. How do you make a differentiation between Islam, Judaism?
I don't make none. Look, I don't want to sound crude or harsh, but I don't accept any of them. Simply, let me put that into context, though.
Yeah.
Let me put that into context. Judaism and what you call Judaism today and Christianity are false narratives, period. All right. Islam began in the 7th century as a result of being the eunostics being persecuted. Remember, the persecution of eunostics began with Constantine in 325. After 325, even before that, actually, because after the Edict of Milan, which was in 313, excuse me, then 12 years later, they had the Nicene Council, where they made sure that all the various religious outposts had people who believed in the Constantine, literally, as the Pope. The center of the religion, the Catholic, wasn't called Catholic yet, but that they would accept that false, fake narrative, which was both the Old Testament and the New Testament after Nicene Council. So then they began a crusade. I don't like that word, but they began a military campaign of extermination against anyone who professed to be eunostic. And this took place, it had begun even before Constantine came, but once he came and declared Christianity as the religion, then it just increased. Then he had the Roman legions, the soldiers who could enforce these things, So they virtually wiped out the Gnostics. Now, not quickly. This took place over 1,000 years. And even today, some Gnosticism still exists, though under different names. So these were people who basically believed in nature, and there were various sects which became more separated because after the catastrophe of 1500 BC, which actually produced white people, and in the aftermath, aftermath of that. And it also destroyed the centers of learning for Gnosticism, especially in Egypt and throughout the Northeast Africa and Arabia. That when those centers fell away because of the damage and because of the change and climatic changes and whatever, I mean, it was a worldwide catastrophe virtually. So all of those things had fallen away. So there was no centralization of keeping the religion, or which was a natural religion anyway, organized. Yet it was widespread all over Europe, all over North Africa, and all over, as far as the historical narratives go, because south of the Sahara, they don't even talk about. They didn't even know where the Nile River came from. So it all was that region of Europe and North Africa and Arabia, basically. So in the middle of this, one of the last remnants, I guess you could say, of Gnostic people were those who were driven out of Jerusalem and other sites in Arabia, were driven out by the Catholics and their armies. And these people went into the desert and then formed a new religion, another way to not accept the Catholic narrative at the time. And that became Islam. Now, there's been some alterations to it since then. And by the same token, what you call the Hebrews didn't even exist until after that. Remember, these Hebrews claim that a narrative going back to what, 400 BC or something like that, where they say God did this and did that and all of this stuff. But really, think about it. Nothing, all the writings that they have, nothing was written in Hebrew, because Hebrew as a language did not exist. It's a language that was contrived long after the Catholic Church became the Roman Empire became the Roman Catholic Empire in the 5th century. And then they increased their attacks against the Gnostics. Islam formed as an the case of the
you were saying that Islam formed as something, then you froze.
I didn't hear you.
You said Islam formed as something, and then you froze.
Oh, okay. Let me.
You were saying Islam, but go ahead. Just go where we.
But I'm saying that Islam formed mostly by former Gnostics who were fleeing the Roman assaults against the Gnostics. You understand that? This is how Islam formed. From what had been the remnants of Gnosticism, which had been down by the 7th century, were under assault constantly from the Augustus in the year 12 of the Christian era, all the way up. So you're talking about 500-600 years of this persecution. And Constantine came in the middle of that and simply made it the legal as far as the political government, the Roman Empire. So now the soldiers, the Roman Empire, the legions of soldiers could assault anybody that was trying to retain Gnosticism. And so they had the people, they wanted control over all of Arabia. And that part of it is when people fled from the cities and into the desert, into the countryside, and eventually they formed this new religion as a counter to what became Hebrew narrative, whereby the Old Testament of the Bible was adjusted as at least as much as the New Testament after the New Testament was established as the official religion in Rome.
Yeah, yeah, and they
You
said,
know, then they
yeah,
would adjust it to try to make it fit into that narrative so they could join the two together as one,
yeah,
you
well,
know?
the
And
Bible, the
mhm,
word Bible means collection of books.
yeah, that's
The
all it
Holy
is.
Bible is the one in which people say is God's word being revealed to people. And that's
Well,
why there's no references, and that's why there's no footnotes. It's all about
yeah,
stories, collection of stories, but they're holy stories. Now, let me just
but
say
they
this.
don't even know what the word holy means.
Yeah, but that's why they put it on the Bible, holy,
Yeah. Well, holy
holy.
was a reference to the sun.
Yeah, and holy and holy also mean that's what they put. The first holidays were by religious groups, but they didn't celebrate Jesus, Islam, or Judaism. They celebrate the new year, the winter solstice, as you used to teach, and things of
Yeah.
that nature. And that's why most holidays are by in the winter. But let me just say this: uh, when it comes down to the
To what?
concept of that, uh, our biggest teachers of religion is our parents
Yeah.
who take us to church, who baptize us or Christian us even when we first born,
Mm,
and go through other rituals with Judaism and religion because
mm,
they want to get them at an early age and then collect that money for a long time, and as they get older. The other thing is that when you think about what John Mbiti in his book, the African Religion and Philosophies, he said
mm,
that the first religion was animism, which is nature,
mm.
and things is nature. But what the Christians came back and said, well, even if it is nature, God created nature and the universe.
Right.
And so therefore, because it answers questions, people want to know, how did all this begin? They don't see themselves as creatures
Mm,
of the earth with ability to think,
mm.
rather than just instinctive.
Yeah.
They just see themselves as a product of a creator.
Mm,
You understand? Rather,
mm.
because everybody feels that creation supersedes evolution. And how do you respond to that?
Look, uh, that's the coverall. You know, when I was a child, I used to go to Bible school. And now, 3 or 4 years old, they start you out. And I always used to ask the teachers, well, explain, how Jesus did this miracle, that, and they couldn't explain it. It's God, boy. You just have to believe in God. God can do anything. This was this was how it was explained to a student, a child. You understand? Because they did not have any answer. There was no answer. There is no answer.
Mm. Well, well,
It
see,
has to
you
full
missed that.
circle be. You have to provide an explanation mathematically and show how this is possible. But none of the Christian or Judeo narrative made any sense. So the coverall was, well, God made nature. They can do any, God can do anything. He made nature. He made everything. He's responsible for this, for that. He sees you all the time, and on and on and on. And I mean, you could write a story, uh, and then ask how that superhero has this or that ability, and you could say, well, it's because he comes from this part of the universe or that part of the universe, and over there they have the power to do this or that. They don't. There's no mathematical explanation, no chemical explanation. It's all somebody's imagination. The so-called founding church fathers, rather, were what? They were white men, white supremacists, who sat down and wrote this narrative out and adjusted it over and over and over and over again. From its origins and after Augustus, all the way up until the 16th, 17th century, they're still making changes to it, trying to make it be to appease any doubters, any skeptics, you know, trying to pull them in. And when they wouldn't or couldn't pull them in, they just killed them. Genocide after genocide after genocide. And everybody was called what? Heathen. Did you ever, let me see, do I have that here? Here, this is Webster's definition of heathen. Listen to this. Heathen. It's medieval English, Anglo-Saxon. One who lives on the heath. Heath meant any wasteland, you know, like a field or desert or something. Tract, in fact, they say, of wasteland. One, an unconverted member of a people or nation, and then in parentheses they put
And how long again?
What did they put in parentheses?
nor Muslim. Though in
What they put in parentheses, Jubal?
in parentheses?
Yeah, you said they put something in
Of
parentheses.
inferior civilization. Okay?
Okay.
Let me start from one again. An unconverted member of a people or nation, in parentheses, usually of an inferior civilization, end of parentheses, that does not acknowledge the God of the Bible. A pagan, one who is neither a Jew, Christian, nor Muslim, though in early use, Muslims were sometimes called heathen. And they put that in parentheses. Two, one whose culture or enlightenment is of an inferior, I can't emphasize that enough, inferior or pagan-like grade, especially an irreligious person, an idolater, a Gentile. And then it makes this quote from Psalms, the chapter 2, verse 8. Quote, I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, unquote. So that tells you a lot right there. This is Webster's dictionary. What their explanation is for anybody who was not a Christian, was not a white man, literally. They were all considered of inferior. That word, inferior, usually of an inferior civilization. Can you imagine the nerve? I mean, think about that for a second. These people are vicious, man. When they came out from Europe, they was poor, raggedy. They didn't have nothing. That's the reason they went out, is to get rich, to get help. You know, they walked into all of these lands. Why? Nobody had standing armies, police forces. For what? You know, problems were settled at the village level. They didn't need that. They walked in. And then the first thing they do is well, let's trade this for that. And they set up a little trading post. Then they bring in some soldiers to guard the trading post. The next thing you know, they instigating bringing the missionaries. Then the missionaries start bringing in the biblical narrative, you know, and then come on, and it goes on from there until eventually they owned the land. They
Yeah,
took over the government
but
of
see,
all of Africa,
it's
all of
pretty,
Asia,
but it's
split
pretty
it up
hard when you
tiny
have
countries
Martin Luther.
that, I
When you have
mean,
Martin Luther King Jr. as a minister, a leader of the civil rights movement, Farrakhan, a Muslim, leader of the Muslim leader, and then you have black people who say they're Jewish or, you know, and things of this nature that's pushing their concept of theology. It's a challenge, Jabal, because so many people want to believe there's life after death. And all three of those religions, major religions, white religion, says that there's life after death. People think they're going to see their aunties, their grandmothers, their mama and daddy in physical form, not
yeah,
you know,
I got you.
like they didn't get old and die, or like they're
Yeah,
gonna see them like when they were born or something.
yeah.
And
And
this
they teach you to fear it too, don't they? You're gonna
yeah,
burn it up. You don't
but see,
believe in this pie in the sky, white supremacy, then you're gonna burn in hell.
yeah, and you are forbidden to listen to anybody else.
Yes,
Yeah, Christians
exactly.
can't
Thou
listen to
shalt
Muslims,
have
Muslims can't.
no other God before me.
Yeah, and go ahead, Ahi.
I just want to say, did that burning in hell, and I know, brother, you talking about how they kept molding and molding the message to fit what they want to be the narrative, um, uh, their religion. But did that happen when uh, King James? Is that a King James kind of interpretation when he came into the English language from the Latin? Uh, 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 King James of England right after Queen Elizabeth.
Well, excuse me, brother. I don't mean to, you know, to just ignore that point, but to me, it's a mute point. It's a mute point. Whatever happened with Christianity and how it was presented after it was first introduced doesn't matter. The whole thing is fake from the get-go. So it doesn't matter whether you come up with the Little Mermaid that's wearing a pink skirt, and then all of a sudden, well, suddenly they change it to a blue skirt. What's that mean? It's fake to begin with. So it's not, it's a mute point. So I don't even think that's important. I wouldn't
Well,
even,
no,
I
but
don't even study such a thing because it has no point. The point is they established a narrative that gave them supremacy and dominance over people, and people who doubted it, they murdered. Simple as that.
No, but what I hear is saying that that possibly is a motivation for people to be in Christianity, regardless of who created it, because they created the fear of that if you didn't believe in this, and you didn't practice this, you're burned in hell forever. I
Yeah,
mean,
but I agree. I agree with that. But I'm talking about it in terms of when it was established. You're saying with King James or with whoever. What difference does it make? You know, in the first
because
place, the whole thing.
because that
Mhm,
part of the religion, he
mhm,
established that book right at the beginning of slavery, and it
mhm,
justifies in their mind what
mhm.
uh how it justifies slavery and how they treat us, and it also how we define ourselves, and that has come up. That fiction has manifested itself in our psyche
Yeah,
today,
yeah.
and
But
I was just wondering,
well, you
was there a difference between what he's spewing and what, but like you said, it's all false.
no,
That
because
falsehood has become
a reality.
really relevant in the Africans' lives here
it
and
is
justifying, and
irrelevant
even in
because
our own minds.
They see us all as inferior. Their word for us was at all times, from the time they came into first contact with us, was inferior, simply because they knew the opposite was true. And they dismissed all of that. That's why when you read the Greek history or about Africa and the African knowledge, they called it the mysteries because they couldn't comprehend it. They didn't have melanin. The Greeks were in awe of the Egyptians, in awe. Read their works about Egypt. They had vases of Egyptians on one side and Greek on the other, and coins, many coins with the faces of African.
They still
All
are.
right, African people. But but when the Romans took over, then that narrative changed. It changed with them making a icon, a cult iconic figure out of Augustus.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, when Constantine took over the empire and declared Christianity as he was accepting the cult icon narrative, and then anybody who wasn't accepting it got their heads chopped off. You understand? And then everybody who was a person of color, they called them heathen. And you just heard their definition of what a heathen was. So they were, by inference, declaring themselves superior. And that narrative was the first thing that they used to impose their so-called superiority.
Hey, Brother Jubal. All right, Brother Jubal, we're going to have part 2. And when you come back in town, and we'll continue this.
Hey, Professor Rahh,
continue this. Yeah.
We don't have a guest for tomorrow. He can come back tomorrow if he wants.
Well, I couldn't because I'm traveling tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm back down there where the system, the Zoom system, I don't even think.
Everybody write down your question for the next time. When Jamal's in here, we're going to continue part 2, Christianity and racism. All right, listen. Rashaki, go ahead. About what's happening.
Well, a week from tomorrow, we have our 4th anniversary show, and Brother Ronnie Roberts is going to be the guest, and the topic is going to be related to the election results. So we're going to talk about that, and hopefully Brother Jubal can come and chime in if he's able to.
Yeah, I'll try. I will try. I say that because I told you what it means to me.
All right, next Tuesday, I'm going to get into the crisis of the Black identity from the standpoint of is there a crisis in Black identity or African identity or African American identity? And the whole scientific justification for being Black or using the Black identity from a scientific standpoint. So we're gonna discuss that next Tuesday. I'll be lecturing on that or discussing that, and it's very important because, as I hear and Machinda and other brothers and say that we don't have a international unification of identity. Even some Africans do not consider themselves Black, and we know more of their history than they know because they were not allowed to get educated or taught in many parts of Africa's 12 million square miles. And most of the people do not go to school at all. And so therefore they don't learn about the Holocaust of enslavement, about their own, or they fight among themselves as tribal conflict because they don't see each other as brothers and sisters, so like what we do. But we're going to get into all of that next week. And then the following week, I hope to have either Black Lives Matter or Spencer Haywood the following Tuesday. All right. Rashid, close us out.
This was a good one. As usual. Thanks, Jubal.
All right.
Each one teach one in Conscious Corner.
All right,
So
Jubal, thanks for everything, brother.
All
I'll
right,
give you a
peace.
call before you leave.